The rain hammered down like it had a personal grudge against the world, turning the streets of our quiet Seattle suburb into rivers of regret. My phone buzzed violently on the nightstand at 2:17 a.m., Jackson's name flashing like a warning siren, his voice cracking through the line with words that sliced deeper than any knife. "Riley, I can't do this alone. Please, God, just come." I was out the door before the call ended, heart pounding harder than the thunder outside, because when your best friend sounds like he's one breath away from the edge, you don't ask questions. You just drive. I'd known Jackson Hale since freshman orientation at the University of Washington, back when we were both wide-eyed kids from fractured families trying to outrun our demons on a campus that smelled like rain-soaked evergreens and overpriced coffee. He was the golden boy, tousled blonde hair, easy laugh that could disarm a room, and a football scholarship that made him untouchable. Me? I was the quiet art major with paint under my nails and a secret buried so deep it ached like a phantom limb. I was gay, and in the hyper-macho world of dorm parties and frat houses, I'd learned to bury it under layers of sarcasm and stolen glances. Jackson was my anchor, the one guy who never made me feel like I had to hide. We'd shared everything. Late-night confessions over cheap beer, road trips up the coast to Cannon Beach where the waves crashed like unresolved arguments, even the brutal fallout when his dad bailed on the family during senior year. He was straight as an arrow, dated a string of cheerleader types, but our bond? It was ironclad, the kind that didn't need labels. That's why, when my tires screeched to a halt in front of the Hale family home on that godforsaken night, I wasn't prepared for the shadow that loomed in the doorway like a storm cloud with a pulse. The porch light flickered, casting jagged shadows across the face of a man I hadn't seen in years. Maddox Hale, Jackson's older brother, all sharp jawline and storm-gray eyes that pinned me in place like a butterfly on a board. He was broader than I remembered, his flannel shirt clinging to rain-drenched shoulders, a duffel bag slung over one arm like he'd just stepped off a Greyhound from some nowhere town in the Midwest. "Riley," he said, his voice low and gravelly, laced with that faint southern drawl he'd picked up from their mom's side of the family. "Didn't expect you to be the cavalry." I killed the engine, the downpour muffling my footsteps as I dashed up the cracked concrete path. Maddox didn't move, just watched me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. Not fear, exactly, but something electric, forbidden. The last time I'd seen him was at Jackson's high school graduation barbecue, 5 years back, when he was home on leave from the Marines, all buzzcut and bravado, flirting shamelessly with every girl in a 10-mile radius. He'd vanished after that, chasing oil rig jobs in North Dakota or some such hellhole, sending the occasional postcard that Jackson would read aloud with a mix of pride and resentment. "Big bros out there slaying dragons," Jackson would joke, but I could hear the undercurrent. The Hale boys had always been a study in contrasts. Jackson the dreamer, Maddox the doer, both carrying the weight of their absent father's ghost. Inside, the house smelled like stale takeout and desperation, the kind that seeps into the walls after too many nights of silence. Jackson was slumped on the sagging leather couch in the living room, knees drawn up, his face a mask of hollow cheeks and red-rimmed eyes. Empty beer cans littered the coffee table, and a half-burnt joint smoldered in an ashtray. Jackson didn't smoke, not usually, but tonight everything was unraveling. "Riley," he rasped as I dropped to my knees beside him, my jeans soaking through on the threadbare carpet. He grabbed my hand like it was a lifeline, his grip bruising. "It's Dad," he called, said he's dying, liver shot from all the booze. "Wants to see me. Us." The words hung there, heavier than the rain outside. Their father, Harlan Hale, the man who'd walked out on them when Jackson was 16, leaving behind a pile of unpaid bills and a mom who worked double shifts at the diner just to keep the lights on. Harlan had been a ghost ever since, bouncing between bar stools in Reno and Vegas, sending sporadic checks that felt more like bribes than apologies. Jackson had idolized him once, football dreams born from watching old VHS tapes of Harlan's glory days as a high school quarterback. But the abandonment, it had carved Jackson hollow, turned his easy charm brittle. We talked about it 1,000 times, how he'd never forgive, how he'd build a life that didn't need that shadow. And now this, a deathbed summons like Harlan had the right to drag them back into the muck. I squeezed his hand, searching for words that wouldn't shatter him further. Hey, breathe. We'll figure it out. When's he expecting you? Tomorrow, Jackson whispered, his voice breaking. But I can't. I just can't go alone. And Mom, she's at work, doesn't even know yet. He glanced up, his blue eyes pleading, and that's when Maddox cleared his throat from the doorway, arms crossed like a sentinel. I'll go with him, Maddox said, his tone brooking no argument. Always planned to once I got back in town. But Jack's here. He's spiraling. Needed someone steady. I stood slowly, feeling the room tilt. Maddox's presence filled the space. All 6'3" of him. His dark hair slicked back from the rain. A faint scar tracing his left eyebrow like a question mark. There was something about him, raw, unpolished, like he'd been forged in fires I could only imagine. Jackson had always painted him as the black sheep, the brother who'd enlisted to escape. But standing there, he looked like salvation wrapped in barbed wire. You just got back? I asked, trying to keep my voice even. Maddox nodded, dropping his duffel by the stairs with a thud. 2 days ago. Rig job dried up, economy, you know? Figured it was time to face the music here. His eyes met mine, holding a beat too long, and I felt a flush creep up my neck. Damn it, Riley, not now. This wasn't the time for whatever ghost of a crush I'd nursed back in college. When Jackson would show me faded photos of his hot Marine brother, and I'd laugh it off while my pulse raced. We spent the next hour piecing together a plan. The three of us huddled around the kitchen table under the harsh fluorescence of a single bulb. Jackson chain-smoked, another bad habit borrowed from the abyss, while Maddox brewed coffee strong enough to strip paint, his hands steady as he poured. He talked logistics. Harlan was in a hospice outside Tacoma, an hour's drive south, Medicaid barely covering the basics. We'll leave at dawn, Maddox said, sliding a mug my way. Our fingers brushed, and I jerked back like I'd been burned, spilling a drop on the scarred formica. You in, Riley? Jax says you're the glue. Jackson nodded vigorously, leaning into my shoulder like he used to in those dorm nights. Can't do this without you, man. You're family. Family. The word twisted in my gut, sweet and sharp. I'd give anything for Jackson, but as the clock ticked toward 3 a.m., with Maddox's quiet strength anchoring the chaos, I wondered if this trip would mend fractures or shatter us all. The rain eased to a drizzle, tapping the window like impatient fingers, and I caught Maddox watching me again, his expression unreadable. Whatever storm was brewing, it had only just begun. By the time we crashed, me on the couch, Jackson in his old room, Maddox claiming the recliner, the house felt smaller, charged with unspoken histories. I lay there in the dark, staring at the water-stained ceiling, replaying Maddox's voice, the way his laugh rumbled low when Jackson cracked a weak joke about their dad's dramatic exit strategy. Sleep evaded me, chased away by the what-ifs. What if Harlan's call was a ploy? What if facing him broke Jackson irreparably? And what if Maddox saw through me, saw the boy who'd spent years loving from the shadows? Dawn crept in gray and unforgiving, the kind of Pacific Northwest light that makes everything feel like a confession. I woke to the clatter of pans. Maddox in the kitchen, whipping up eggs and bacon like it was a Sunday ritual. Jackson shuffled in, looking marginally less haunted, his hair a blonde mess. Smells like home, he muttered, forcing a smile. Maddox plated the food with efficiency born of barracks life, and for a moment we were just three guys fueling up for battle, trading barbs about Seattle traffic and the Mariners' latest collapse. But as we loaded into Maddox's beat-up Ford F-150, the one with mud-splattered plates from God knows where, the weight settled back in. Jackson rode shotgun, fiddling with the radio until it spat out some old Springsteen, Thunder Road, filling the cab with its desperate yearning. I sat in the back, knees bumping the cooler of sodas Maddox had packed, watching the city blur into highway. The evergreens whipped by, dense and dripping, a green tunnel to whatever waited in Tacoma. Maddox drove with one hand on the wheel, the other drumming the dash, his profile etched against the window like a sculpture. You ever think about it? He asked suddenly, eyes on the road. What you'd say to the old man if you had the chance? Jackson stiffened. I'd say go to hell. But politely. I leaned forward, caught in the crossfire. I'd ask why, I said quietly. Not for forgiveness, just the truth. Maddox glanced in the rear view, our eyes locking. Truth's a luxury we can't afford sometimes. But yeah, why's a good start? The conversation frayed after that, lapsing into silence broken only by the wiper's rhythmic swish. Jackson's foot tapped anxiously, and I reached up to squeeze his shoulder, a silent promise. But my gaze kept drifting to Maddox. The way his flannel stretched across his back, the faint tattoo peeking from his collar, some eagle or anchor I couldn't make out. It was stupid, reckless, but in that confined space, with the road unspooling like fate, I felt the pull. A dangerous gravity. We hit Tacoma just past 9 a.m., the industrial sprawl giving way to quieter streets lined with faded Victorians and strip malls. The hospice was a low brick building off the interstate, its parking lot half empty, the air inside thick with antiseptic and regret. A nurse with kind eyes and a name tag reading Maria led us to room 214, her voice soft as she warned. He's lucid today, but weak. Take your time. Harlan Hale looked like a deflated version of the photos Jackson kept hidden. A wiry frame swallowed by hospital sheets, oxygen tubes snaking from his nose, his once thick hair now a silver stubble. His eyes, though, those sharp blue Hale eyes, fluttered open as we entered, locking on Jackson with a hunger that bordered on feral. Son, he croaked, voice like sandpaper. You came. Jackson froze in the doorway, fists clenched. Maddox nudged him forward gently, then stepped back, pulling me with him into the corner. Give him space, Maddox murmured, close enough that I could smell his soap. Pine and something earthier, like rig mud and resolve. What followed was a masterclass in raw humanity. Harlan's halting apologies, tales of regret woven with excuses. Lost jobs, bad bets, a love for the bottle that outstripped everything. Jackson stood rigid at first, arms crossed, but as the minutes ticked by, the dam cracked. You left us, he said, voice trembling. Mom cried for months. I quit football because every game felt like chasing your ghost. Harlan's hand trembled toward him. I know. God, kid, I know. Should have fought harder. Tears tracked down his weathered cheeks, and Jackson, my unbreakable Jackson, sank into the chair, head in hands, shoulders shaking. Maddox and I watched from the shadows, the room shrinking around us. Harlan's gaze shifted then, landing on Maddox with a mix of pride and sorrow. Mad, my soldier, heard you got out. Proud as hell. Maddox's jaw tightened. Don't, Dad. Not now. But Harlan pressed on, voice fading. Both my boys. Strong. And you, son. He nodded at me, eyes narrowing. The friend. Jax talks about you. Good kid. Family. The word again. It lodged in my throat like a stone. We stayed another hour, the visit stretching into a fragile truce. Stories of better days, promises of letters Jackson swore he'd ignore. When Harlan drifted into sleep, we slipped out, the weight of it all pressing down like the low clouds outside. In the parking lot, Jackson lit a cigarette, inhaling deeply. That wasn't what I expected, he admitted, exhaling smoke that curled like ghosts. Felt real. Maddox clapped his shoulder. Healing's messy, but you showed up. That's more than he deserves. I nodded, throat tight, but as we piled back into the truck, something shifted. Jackson dozed off almost immediately, head lolling against the window, leaving Maddox and me in charged quiet. You okay? Maddox asked, pulling onto the highway. Yeah, I lied, watching the mile markers flash by. Just heavy. He hummed agreement, then after a pause, Jax is lucky to have you. Always has been. The compliment landed soft, but it stirred something deeper. A warmth I hadn't allowed myself in years. We drove in companionable silence, the radio humming low, but every glance in the mirror felt like a spark. By the time we hit Seattle's outskirts, the rain had returned, and with it, an undercurrent of possibility. Little did I know, the real storm was just revving up. Back at the house, The afternoon dragged like a hangover, the three of us orbiting each other in a haze of unspoken exhaustion. Jackson claimed he needed a nap, disappearing upstairs with a mumbled thanks, guys, leaving Maddox and me to clean up the kitchen detritus. Beer cans from last night, the greasy breakfast plates. It was domestic, almost normal, the clink of dishes punctuating the patter of rain on the roof. But normal was a lie. Every brush of elbows at the sink sent a jolt through me, Maddox's proximity a live wire. "You don't have to stick around," he said, drying a mug with a faded dish towel, his forearms corded with muscle from years of hard labor. "Jacks'll crash hard, emotional whiplash does that."
I shrugged, skrabyn a stubborn pan.
"I'm not going anywhere. We're in this." Truth was, part of me didn't want to leave. Not with him here, filling the empty spaces Jackson's absence had always left. The Hale house had been my second home through college, weekends spent binging bad action flicks and debating philosophy over pizza. But Maddox's return made it feel alive in a way I'd forgotten. Dangerous territory, Riley. Jackson was the priority. He leaned against the counter, crossing his arms, that scar on his eyebrow catching the light. "Appreciate it. Didn't peg you for the knight in shining armor type back when we met. You were all sketches and brooding stares." I laughed, a short bark that surprised me. That was college me. Learned to armor up. I set the pan down, water dripping from my hands, and met his gaze. Up close, those gray eyes held flecks of blue, like storm clouds over Puget Sound. "What about you?" Oil rigs to family drama, quite the pivot. Maddox's mouth quirked, not quite a smile. Rigs were escape. Enlisting was escape. Coming back, that's the real fight. He pushed off the counter, grabbing his jacket from the hook. "Walk with me? Need air." We stepped out into the backyard, a patchy square of grass bordered by chain link and overgrown blackberries, the neighborhood's distant hum underscoring the quiet. The air was crisp, laced with petrichor, and Maddox lit a smoke, Marlboros, the red pack crinkling in his pocket. He offered me one. I declined, but the gesture felt intimate, like sharing secrets. We paced the fence line, boots squelching in mud, and he talked, halting at first, then pouring out like the rain. The Marines had been glory and grind, deployments to dusty corners of the world where brotherhood meant life or death. But the rigs? Isolation on steroids, 12-hour shifts in sub-zero winds, bunked with roughnecks who drowned doubts in whiskey. "Felt like I was running from him," Maddox admitted, flicking ash into the weeds. "Dad's shadow. Thought distance would kill it." I nodded, kicking a pinecone. "Jax carries it too. Different way, builds walls instead of running." "Yeah." He stopped, turning to face me, the cigarette glowing between his fingers. "You're good for him, Riley. Ground him. He ever tell you about that time in college, when he almost dropped out after Dad's last postcard?" I had to think. "Yeah, the one with the crumpled 20 and, 'Sorry, kid,' scrawled on the back. Punched a wall. I taped his hand, made him watch the Goonies till he laughed." Maddox chuckled, low and warm. "Classic. You're the steady one." His eyes searched mine, lingering, and the air thickened. I could feel the question forming, the one I dodged for years. "Who are you? Really, Riley?" But he didn't ask. Instead, he stubbed out the smoke. "Thanks for showing up last night. Meant something." "Anytime," I said, and meant it. We headed back inside as dusk fell, the sky bruising purple, and found Jackson awake, showered, looking almost human in a clean hoodie. He insisted on pizza, our ritual, and we ordered from the local joint extra pepperoni, the delivery guy a familiar face from high school days. Over greasy slices at the table, the mood lightened. Jackson recounting hospice awkwardness with exaggerated flair, Maddox countering with rigged tales of near misses and bar fights. I laughed harder than I had in months, the warmth of it seeping into bones I hadn't realized were chilled. But as night deepened, cracks showed. Jackson got quiet, picking at his crust, then blurted, "What if he wants to make amends? Like, really? Do I let him in?" Maddox and I exchanged glances, mine pleading for backup, his steady as oak. It's your call, Maddox said carefully. But amends aren't free. He earns it or he doesn't. Jackson nodded, but his eyes were distant, haunted. He crashed early again, leaving Maddox and me with the dishes once more. This time, the silence was companionable, broken by the TV flickering on low. Some cop show rerun, all grit and moral ambiguity. We sank onto the couch, a respectful distance at first. But as the episodes blurred, Maddox stretched out, his boot nudging mine accidentally on purpose. You draw any more? He asked, nodding at the faded sketchpad on the coffee table mine, forgotten from last visit. Here and there, freelance gigs, book covers, logos, pays the rent. I pulled it over, flipping through half-finished pages. Urban landscapes, faces from memory. Show me. It wasn't a request. I hesitated, then landed on a charcoal study of Jackson laughing, mid-throw of a frisbee on Alki Beach. Maddox traced the lines with a calloused finger. Damn, you capture him. The joy, but the edge underneath. Heat flushed my cheeks. Practice. He turned a page, finding an older one. A rough portrait of him from that graduation photo, all youthful fire. This me? I froze. Yeah. Jax dared me. Draw my badass brother. Maddox's smile was slow, devastating. Not bad. Eyes are too soft, though. He leaned closer, our shoulders brushing, and the room narrowed to the space between us. The TV droned on, but I couldn't hear it over my pulse. His hand rested on the pad, inches from mine, and I wondered if he felt it too. The spark, the pull. Gaydar wasn't science, but in that moment, with the rain whispering secrets outside, it screamed. Then Jackson's voice from the stairs. Riley? You up? The moment shattered. Maddox pulled back, casual as ever, and I stood, sketchpad clutched like a shield. Yeah, coming. Upstairs, Jackson was pacing his room. A mess of posters and laundry, the bed unmade. Can't sleep. Mind racing. He flopped down, patting the mattress. Old habit, we'd crash like that in college, platonic as brothers, talking till dawn. I sat back against the headboard. Spill. He did. Fears of becoming Harlan. Resentment bubbling like acid. Gratitude for Maddox's return twisted with jealousy. Big bro swooping in, the hero. And you, he added, turning to me. Showing up like that. You're the only one who gets it, Riley. The mess inside. I swallowed hard, his vulnerability a knife's edge. Love you, man. Always. The words were true, but layered now, complicated by the man downstairs. We talked till my eyes burned, Jackson drifting off mid-sentence, his head on my shoulder. I eased away, heart heavy, and slipped downstairs. Maddox was gone. Note on the counter. Out for a drive. Lock up. Relief and disappointment warred in me as I crashed on the couch. Dreams fractured by rain and gray eyes. Morning brought coffee and clarity, or so I thought. Maddox returned with donuts from the bakery on the corner, powdered sugar dusting his flannel like fresh snow. Jackson emerged ravenous, and we ate on the porch, watching neighbors mow lawns in the drizzle. Plans formed. Maddox job hunting, Jackson back to his barista gig, me to my studio downtown. But the undercurrent lingered, Maddox's glances my way like Morse code. That evening, Jackson suggested a hike, our reset button, up to Rattlesnake Ledge for the view over the valley. Maddox tagged along, his presence a wild card. The trail was slick, roots treacherous, but the burn in my legs cleared my head. At the top, wind whipping, Seattle sprawled below like a promise. Space needle-piercing clouds, fairies cutting the sound. Jackson hooped, arms wide. To new starts, Maddox echoed, but his eyes were on me, toasting with a water bottle. On the descent, Jackson surged ahead, leaving us trailing. About last night, Maddox said, voice low. The sketch meant more than you know. I stumbled on a rock, catching myself. Just art. Wool. He steadied me, hand on elbow, lingering. You're good at seeing people, Riley. Too good. The trail curved, Jackson out of sight, and Maddox stopped, turning me gently. Rain beaded on his lashes, his breath warm. I've thought about you too, you know? Those postcards? Half were excuses to ask Jax about his artist buddy. My world tilted. Maddox! He closed the gap, not kissing, but forehead to mine, a breath away. Tell me to stop. I couldn't. The moment stretched, electric, until Jackson's shout echoed, "You guys coming or what?" We pulled apart, hearts hammering, the secret blooming fragile between us. Back home, dinner was takeout Thai, spicy enough to numb doubts. Jackson chattered about a date, some girl from work, his normalcy a bomb. But as he washed up, Maddox cornered me in the hall. "This isn't nothing, Riley." "But Jax." "Complicated," I finished. "I know." He nodded, thumb brushing my jaw. "Worth it." "God help me." I whispered, "Yeah." That night, sleep came fitful, dreams of ledges and falls. Morning cracked open with a call from the hospice. Harlan had rallied, wanted another visit. Jackson agreed, reluctant, and we piled in again, the drive tense with yesterday's ghost. At the bedside, Harlan was sharper, pressing Maddox about his future. "Settle down, son. Find a girl. Build something." Maddox's laugh was bitter. "Not that simple, Dad." Harlan's eyes flicked to me, then Jackson. "You boys, stick together. That's what matters." We left lighter, somehow, progress fragile as it was. But in the truck, Jackson turned, eyes narrowed. "You and Maddox seem tight. What's up?" "Just talking," I said, too quick. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Cool. He's intense, right?" "Always was." The seed of doubt planted, we returned to routine. But the air hummed. Days blurred, me at my drafting table, sketching feverishly. Now with Maddox's face bleeding into the lines. Jackson at the coffee shop, venting shifts over texts. Maddox pounding pavement, interviews at auto shops and construction firms. Evenings were ours. Barbecues in the drizzle, beers on the porch, stories stacking like cordwood. One night, after Jackson bowed out for a date, Maddox and I walked to the corner store for ice cream. Childish, but it fit. Under streetlights, he took my hand, lacing fingers. "Missed this," he murmured. "The possibility." We kissed then, soft and searching, against the chain link of the park, the world fading to salt and pine. It was revelation. His lips firm, tasting of mint, hands framing my face like I was precious. No rush, no heat, just connection, deep as roots. But betrayal lurks in the best intentions. The next morning, Jackson cornered me in the kitchen, face thunderous. "Saw you last night. With Maddox." My stomach dropped. "Jax. He's using you," he spat, "to get to me. Fix what Dad broke. Don't be the pawn, Riley." The accusation stung, betrayal twisting like a blade. "It's not like that." But doubt crept in, cold and insidious. Was it? Maddox's timing, the intensity, therapy for his brother, with me as collateral? I confronted him that afternoon, in the garage amid oil cans and tools. "Jax thinks you're playing me." Maddox's face hardened. "And you?" "I don't know." The lie tasted bitter. He stepped close, voice raw. "This is real, Riley. Scary real. But if you need space." I walked away, heart fracturing. The rift widened. Jackson pulling me into late nights of reminiscing. Maddox retreating to job hunts, silences stretching. Harlan called again, weaker, and the visit was stormier. Accusations flying, old wounds ripped wide. Jackson stormed out, Maddox chasing, leaving me to hold Harlan's hand as he wept. In the aftermath, alone in the truck, I broke. Called Maddox. "I believe you. Come back." He did that night under cover of rain. We talked on the porch, truth spilling. His own secrets, questioning since the Marines, boys in barracks he'd never touched but dreamed of. My college closets, the fear of losing Jackson. "Love him like family," I said. "But you're home." The kiss that followed was deeper, laced with forgiveness. But dawn brought Jackson's fury, overhearing, confronting. "My brother? My best friend? How long?" Words failed. Betrayal's blade cut both ways. He packed a bag, eyes glassy. Fix this or we're done. The climax loomed, a precipice. Harlan's end came swift. A final call. Come say goodbye. We raced south, the cab thick with unspoken accusations. At the bedside, Harlan's last words. Proud of you boys. Love each other. That's enough. He slipped away as Jackson sobbed. Maddox holding him, me the outsider now. In the parking lot, fractures mended raw. Jackson, voice breaking. I was scared of losing you both. Maddox pulled him close. Family's messy, but we choose it. Jackson turned to me, eyes searching. You choose us. Always? I whispered. The three of us in a huddle, rain mingling with tears. The drive back from Tacoma that final time was a funeral procession in slow motion. The highway a gray ribbon unspooling through sheets of rain that blurred the world to smears of green and concrete. Jackson rode shotgun again, but the easy banter was gone, replaced by a heavy quiet broken only by the occasional sniffle or the wiper's metronomic thump. Maddox gripped the wheel white-knuckled, his jaw set like he was navigating a minefield, and I sat in the back, knees drawn up, replaying Harlan's last breath. The rattle, the release. Like a loop I couldn't pause. We'd held each other in that room, the Hale brothers crumbling into my arms, a tangle of limbs and grief that felt both sacred and profane. But now, in the harsh light of aftermath, the questions loomed larger than the loss. Could we rebuild from ruins? Or was this the end of us, scattered like ashes on the wind? We stopped at a diner off I-5, the kind of roadside relic with checkered floors and waitresses who called you Han. The air thick with grease and percolating coffee. Jackson ordered pancakes he didn't touch, Maddox black coffee that steamed like his temper, and I picked at a club sandwich, the bread sticking to the roof of my mouth. We should talk, Jackson said finally, pushing his plate away, his voice raw from crying. About everything. Maddox nodded, slow, like agreeing hurt. Yeah, no more running. I braced myself, the booth feeling like a confessional. Jackson started, haltingly. How Harlan's death unearthed not just sorrow but a mirror to his own fears. Becoming the absentee, the breaker of bonds. Seeing you too. It hit me. I've been holding on too tight, Riley. Like if I let go, you'd vanish like he did. His eyes, red-rimmed, met mine. But that's bullshit. You're not him. And Maddox. Hell, your blood. But you've been gone so long. I forgot how to trust you'd stay. Maddox reached across, squeezing his forearm. I bailed too, Jax. After Mom got sick that second time, I hit the road instead of helping. Rigs were cowardice. But I'm here now. For real. The admission hung there, vulnerable as exposed wire. I watched them. These two men who'd shaped my world, peeling back layers I'd only glimpsed. I never wanted to hurt you, I said, voice steady despite the churn. Jax, you're my brother in all but blood. But Maddox, it grew. Organic. Scary as hell. Jackson exhaled, long and shaky. I get it. Kinda. Just don't shut me out. We've always been a team. Team, Maddox echoed, a ghost of a smile, with Riley as the heart. We lingered till the coffee went cold, forging a tentative pact. Honesty, no pedestals, space to heal. The rain eased as we hit Seattle, sun-piercing clouds in rare November shafts, gilding the skyline like absolution. Dropping Jackson at his apartment. A studio walk-up in Capitol Hill, posters of indie bands curling at the edges. He hugged us both, fierce and lingering. Call me tomorrow. Beers on me. Maddox and I watched him go, the door clicking shut like a period. In the truck, alone at last, he turned to me, hand finding mine across the console. That went better than I dreamed. Yeah. I breathed, thumb tracing his knuckles. But it's not fixed. Takes time. He pulled me across for a kiss, soft, grounding, tasting of diner bitterness and hope. We've got time. The weeks that followed were a delicate dance, stitching wounds with thread as fine as spider silk. Harlan's ashes arrived by mail, a plain urn that Jackson insisted we scatter at Discovery Park, the cliffs overlooking the Sound where their mom used to take them as kids. We went at sunset, the three of us, wind whipping off the water, gulls crying like mourners. Jackson said a few words, simple, unsentimental, then tipped the urn, gray flakes swirling into the tide. Maddox added a marine pin, glinting as it fell. I tossed a sketch, a quick pencil of Harlan smiling from an old photo, edges blurred to forgive. After, we hiked the loop trail, boots crunching gravel, the conversation meandering from grief to futures. Jackson had enrolled in night classes, graphic design, my world, and beamed about his first assignment. Maddox landed a gig at a body shop in Fremont. Wrenching on classics, his calloused hands soon smudged with grease. Me? My freelance picked up a commission for a local brewery's label, but the real art was in stolen moments. Sketching Maddox asleep on the couch, his chest rising steady. Lazy Sundays with Jackson at the market, haggling over heirloom tomatoes. But harmony's fragile, and cracks spiderwebbed under pressure. Christmas loomed, the first without Harlan or their mom. Cancer 2 years back, a quiet thief. Jackson spiraled, bailing on shifts, ghosting texts, until one night he showed up at my door, soaked and slurring, bottle in hand. Can't do holidays, he mumbled, collapsing on my futon. Too empty. I sobered him with water and toast. Maddox arriving an hour later with takeout and that unflappable calm. We bunkered in, stringing lights haphazardly, blasting holiday punk. Jackson's pick, something by the Pogues to drown the schmaltz. By midnight, fortressed in blankets, Jackson confessed deeper. Dad's gone, but I feel him everywhere, judging, and you too, happy. Makes me feel like the odd man out. Maddox pulled him into a headlock, gentle. Never odd, little bro. You're the spark. I nodded, throat tight. We need you, Jax. Always will. He stayed the night, the three of us piled like puppies, and dawn brought fragile peace. Pancakes charred at the edges, laughter bubbling genuine. But the incident lingered, a reminder. Healing wasn't linear. New Year's Eve tested us further. Jackson scored tickets to a show at the Showbox, some indie rock outfit from Portland, and insisted we go, Team Hail +1. The venue pulsed with bodies, bass thumping like a second heart, confetti raining as midnight struck. In the crush, Maddox and I stole a kiss amid cheers, but Jackson saw, froze, then forced a grin. Gross, you two. Get a room. Later, over beers at a dive, he pulled me aside. It's weird. Good weird. But, promise me something? If it crashes, you come to me first. The plea twisted, but I swore it, sealing with a clink of bottles. Maddox joined, oblivious, slinging arms around us both. To us, he toasted. Messy, but ours. January thawed into tentative bloom. Maddox moved into a sublet nearby, a shoebox over a laundromat, smelling of starch and possibility, and I spent nights there, tangled in sheets that smelled of him, conversations stretching till the city hushed. We'd talk dreams. His, a custom bike shop someday. Mine, a gallery show of queer Pacific Northwest portraits, faces like ours, raw, resilient. Sex was secondary, a gentle exploration born of trust, bodies mapping vulnerabilities with care. Jackson thrived too, aced his first project, landed a bar promotion. We celebrated with a road trip to Olympic, camping under stars that wheeled vast and indifferent. Tents pitched by a roaring creek, fire crackling, stories flowed. Maddox's rig ghost tales, Jackson's college escapades, my quiet admissions of isolation pre them. Around the flames, Jackson watched us. Me leaning into Maddox's side, and something shifted in his eyes. Acceptance, full and fierce. But betrayal's shadow lingers, patient as fog. Is struck in February, Valentine's shadow long. Maddox's ex, a rig buddy, rough around edges, more fling than flame, crashed back into orbit, texting coordinates for a catch-up in Tacoma. Maddox swore it was closure, but doubt gnawed. Go, I said, feigning nonchalance. Clear the air. He did, returning late, reeking of bar smoke and regret. Nothing, he insisted, pulling me close. Ancient history. But Jackson, Ever the protector cornered him next day. Saw the texts, bro. If you're playing Riley. Maddox's temper flared, rare, volcanic. I'm not dad. Trust me for once. The shout echoed, Jackson storming out, me caught in the blast radius. Alone, Maddox crumbled. He thinks I'm like him. Running. You're not. I soothed, holding him as tremors passed. But the seed sprouted. Jackson distant, texts curt. Nights out with new friends that smelled of deflection. Climax brewed in March, rain relentless as accusations. Harlan's estate settled. A pittance, split 3 ways, me included, per a codicil Jackson unearthed. Jackson fixated. Blood money. Drank it away in a bender, crashing at my place incoherent. You chose him over me? He slurred, eyes wild. Best friend, my ass. Wounds reopened. Betrayal's blade poison now. Maddox found us at dawn. Jackson passed out. Me hollow-eyed. What happened? Old ghosts. I whispered. He nodded, no judgment, just action, coffee brewing, toast burning, a plan forming. We staged intervention that afternoon at the Hale House, now Maddox's domain. Jackson woke to us waiting, faces stern but loving. Enough, Maddox said. We're family. Act like it. Jackson lashed. Family? You stole mine. But cracked under the weight, sobs racking. Truths tumbled. Fear of abandonment doubled. Seeing us happy mirroring his voids. I betrayed you first. Pushed you away, 'cause I couldn't handle the change. We held him. The 3 of us, a knot of limbs and tears. Rain lashing windows like applause. Forgiveness flowed. Hard one. Maddox vowing roots. Me promising balance. Jackson swearing sobriety. Therapy. Spring unfurled green and forgiving. Conflicts ebbing like tides. We planted a tree in the backyard. Maple for endurance. Roots to anchor us. Maddox's shop dream took shape. A Kickstarter humming. Jackson's designs sold at a local fair. My portraits, including them both, hung in my first solo show. Yet the humanistic core pulsed. No perfect bows, just humans muddling through. One night, porch beers in hand, Jackson raised a toast. To shifts. And sticking. Maddox clinked, gray eyes on me. To everything. I smiled, heart full. The presence that shifted it all? Not theft, but gift. A brother reclaimed. A love unearthed. A family forged in fire. Summer crashed in like a wave nobody saw coming. The kind that soaks you to the bone before you can gasp. Seattle shed its perpetual gray for skies so blue they ached. The air humming with salt and barbecue smoke. And for the first time in years, the Hale orbit felt expansive, not claustrophobic. Jackson threw himself into his program, churning out digital collages that blended grunge aesthetics with queer icons. Kurt Cobain reimagined as a drag king, his professors buzzing. Maddox's body shop gig evolved into side hustles, restoring a '72 Chevy for a client who turned out to be a venture guy, planting seeds for that dream garage. And me? The show had been a quiet triumph, sold 3 pieces, including the one of Maddox midlaff, his scar a silver slash against firelight. Critics called it intimate Americana. And for once, I believed them. But peace is a jealous mistress, and old habits die screaming. Jackson's therapy unearthed landmines. Sessions spilling into late-night voicemails. His voice cracking over voicemails about imposter syndrome and fear of joy. He'd show up unannounced, pizza in hand, collapsing on my couch with a grin that didn't fool anyone. Just checking in, he'd say. But his eyes begged for reassurance. For the uncomplicated US of college days. Maddox noticed, of course, his quiet observation a balm and a burden. Give him space, he'd murmur after Jax left, pulling me onto the fire escape of his apartment, the city twinkling below like scattered promises. He's grieving us as much as Dad. I knew he was right, but the pull tugged. Jackson's texts at 2 a.m. Can't sleep. Remember that time in Portland? Evoking ghosts of our bond, pure and unshadowed. One weekend, he dragged me to a Mariners game. Noses in nachos, the crack of bats echoing our old cheers. In the 7th inning stretch, arms around shoulders, he leaned in, Miss this. Us against the world. Me too, I admitted, the stadium roar swallowing the ache. But as we filed out into the balmy night, Pike Place buzzing with buskers, I spotted Maddox across the street, waiting, patient, a bouquet of wildflowers from the market in hand. Jax followed my gaze, waving him over with forced enthusiasm. The three of us wandered the stalls, Maddox's arm loose around my waist, Jackson sampling chowder with exaggerated slurps. It worked, mostly, laughter bubbling genuine, but the undercurrent simmered, a pot left too long on the boil. Betrayal reared its head subtly at first, in omissions rather than outright lies. Maddox's venture contact blossomed into meetings. Late ones, downtown at sleek lofts overlooking Elliott Bay. Networking, he'd say, kissing my temple before heading out in button-downs that made him look like a stranger. I'd nod, burying doubt in sketches, but Jackson fanned the flames, casual drops over coffee. Heard Maddox is schmoozing bigwigs. Careful, Riley, ambition changes people. I brushed it off, but seeds took root. One night, post-meeting, Maddox came home buzzed on craft cocktails, collapsing beside me with tales of investors and blueprints. This could be it, he enthused, eyes alight. Shop of our own, vintage rides, custom queer pride wraps. His excitement was infectious, hands gesturing wild, but when he pulled me close, his breath held a tang I couldn't place. Not just gin, but something sharper, secretive. The fracture widened mid-July, heat wave turning the city into a steam bath. Jackson's final project deadline loomed, and he enlisted me for critique. Nights at my studio, takeout containers piling like accusations. Maddox joined once, praising Jax's work with gruff sincerity, but tension crackled. Jax's jokes landed pointed, Maddox's silences brooding. After, alone, Maddox confronted. He's testing us, seeing if we'll crack. He's scared, I countered defensive, of being left behind again. Maddox's scar twitched. And you're the referee? Pick a side, Riley. The words stung, a slap from the man who'd promised patience. I stormed out, walking the humid streets till lungs burned, ending at Jackson's door. He let me in without question, offering a beer and the futon. Rough night? He asked, settling cross-legged, all earnest concern. We talked till stars wheeled. His anxieties, my fears, the delicate tripod we'd built. I don't want to lose you, he said softly. Either of you, but it feels like I'm fading. You're not, I insisted, gripping his knee. Platonic? Always. But the intimacy hummed, an echo of what Maddox and I shared. He crashed on the floor beside me, breath sinking in sleep, and I woke to his arm draped casual over my waist. Innocent but loaded. Maddox's text came at noon. Where are you? We need to talk. Guilt gnawed as I slipped out, Jax murmuring sleepy goodbyes. At the apartment, Maddox paced, face thunder. Spent the night? With him. Not like that, I snapped, but the defensiveness betrayed me. He stopped, hurt flickering. Then what? I'm trying here, Riley. Building something for us. But it feels like you're still choosing. The argument escalated. Voices rising, old insecurities clawing out. My fear of abandonment, his of unworthiness, Jackson's ghost between every word. He's my best friend, I yelled. You can't erase that. And you're mine. Maddox shot back, voice breaking. But this? It's killing me. He left for a drive, truck roaring into the haze, and I called Jax, voicemail. Panic clawed. I raced to his place, finding it empty, door ajar. Inside, chaos. Sketches torn, bottles shattered. A note scrawled on printer paper. Can't watch it fall apart. Gone for a bit. Love you both, don't follow. Heart in throat, I dialed Maddox straight to voicemail. The city swallowed me then. A frantic search. Bars, parks, the beach where we'd buried time capsules as kids. Hours blurred, sweat-soaked, until a text from an unknown. Jack's at a motel in Everett. Need space. Tell Mads I'm sorry. Relief ward with dread. I drove north, the interstate a lifeline. Arriving at a seedy chain off the highway, neon flickering vacancy. Jax answered shirtless, eyes bloodshot, room reeking of regret. "Riley," he croaked, stepping aside. "Didn't mean to bail. Just overwhelmed." We sat on the sagging bed, him nursing a water, me spilling the fight. "He's not wrong," Jax admitted, head in hands. "I've been pushing. Jealous, maybe, of what you have, the ease." "It's not easy," I said. "We're all fumbling." He looked up, vulnerable. "Then why does it hurt so much?" "Because we care," I whispered. "Too damn much." Maddox arrived an hour later, face etched with worry, pulling Jax into a bear hug that cracked something open. "Idiot," he muttered. "Don't scare us like that." The three of us talked till dawn, raw, unfiltered. Jax owned his sabotage, Maddox his walls, me my divided loyalties. "No more triangles," Maddox decreed. "We're a unit. Messy, but whole." Pact renewed, we drove back in convoy, the sun rising gold over the sound. August brought balm. A group trip to the San Juans, ferry rocking gentle, kayaks slicing fjords. Laughter returned. Jax capsizing dramatic, Maddox hauling him aboard, me snapping photos that captured joy unfeigned. Evenings by campfire, Esmore sticky, stories veering to futures. Jax's graduation, Maddox's pitch meeting, my next series, portraits of chosen family. But climax crested in September, leaves turning amber warnings. Maddox's investor called full funding, but relocation. Portland, cheaper rents, bigger scene. "It's an hour away," he said over dinner at my place. Jax across the table, fork paused. "Day trip's easy." The room chilled. Jax's face paled. "Another exit?" "Not like that," Maddox protested. "It's for us, for the shop stability." I nodded, but doubt flickered, echoes of Riggs' enlistment. "We can make it work," I said, forcing brightness. But Jax bolted, chair scraping. "Sure. Build your empire. I'll hold the fort." The door slammed, leaving Maddox and me in wreckage. "He'll come around," he insisted, but his eyes begged belief. He didn't. Days stretched silent. Jax dodging calls, me mediating texts that went unread. Maddox threw into work, blueprints piling, while I sketched furiously, faces fracturing on paper. Desperation peaked mid-month. A surprise party for Maddox's birthday, Jax's idea from weeks back. I planned solo venue at a Fremont brewpub, invites to shop buddies, a cake iced with Hales Hall. Night of, Maddox arrived touched, hugging me fierce amid cheers. But Jax was MIA. As candles guttered, my phone buzzed. "Can't. Sorry." Heart sinking, I stepped out, dialing. Voicemail. Then Maddox's ex, that ghost, texted a photo. Jax at a bar, arm around the guy, laughing. "Heard he's single. Thought you'd wanna know." Betrayal? Double-edged. I showed Maddox, his face crumpling. "What the hell?" We confronted next day, storming Jax's apartment. He opened bleary-eyed, denial crumbling under evidence. It was nothing, a rebound, stupidity. I was pissed about Portland. "About us," Maddox growled. "You sabotaged to keep us stuck." Jax deflated. "Maybe. Afraid you'll leave like Dad. And Riley, if he follows." The air thickened, truths colliding. "I'm not leaving," Maddox said, voice steel. "But you gotta trust, Jax, or we lose everything." Tears tracked. "I do. God, I do." We collapsed then, hugs bruising, apologies layering like sediment. Jax confessed the bar fling. One night, shame-fueled, a cry for attention. "Hurt you to hurt myself," he whispered. Forgiveness was jagged, but given Maddox canceling the move, shop stays here. Me burning the damning sketch, Jackson rolling in group therapy. October gilded the wounds, foliage aflame, air crisp with redemption. We volunteered at a queer youth center, Maddox wrenching bikes for teens, Jax teaching design, me leading art workshops. Bonds mended stronger, laughter laced with scars. Yet the emotional core pulsed. Humanity's beautiful flaw, love as verb, not noun. One eve, atop Cary Park, City lights sprawling. Jax slung arms around us. To staying put. Maddox grinned. To us. I leaned in whole. The shift, not end, but evolution. A best friend held, a brother loved, a life reclaimed. November circled back, the calendar mocking with its echo of that rain-lashed night. But this year, the storm felt earned. A cleansing downpour after drought. The anniversary of Harlan's call fell on a Thursday, and Jackson marked it deliberate. Dinner at the old diner, the three of us in a booth scarred by initials and time. No speeches, just plates of meatloaf and mashed. Stories retold with softer edges. Harlan's laugh like thunder. His flaws humanized in hindsight. Maddox raised his Coke. To the bastard who made us. Jackson clinked, eyes bright. And the family we built. I watched them, heart swelling. Two hale boys, once fractured satellites, now orbiting steady. Maddox's shop had taken root in a warehouse by the locks. Vintage Harleys gleaming under halogens. Pride flags fluttering from the rafters. Jax graduated that semester, portfolio bursting, landing an internship at a Seattle agency. Remote, flexible, his sketches now paying bills. Me? A gallery contract for a series on American intimacies. Faces like ours woven in, Jax's grin defiant, Maddox's gaze tender. Mine reflected back, unafraid. But romance's fire needs stoking, and ours flickered in quiet ways. Maddox's notes tucked in lunch bags, miss your chaos. Stolen hikes where hands linked natural as breathing. Nights where words wove deeper than touch, dreams of adopting someday. A home with creaky floors and art on walls. With Jax, it evolved to bromance refined, boundaries blurred benevolent. We'd game nights, him trash-talking over controllers, or coffee runs where he grilled me gentle. Maddox treating you right? His approval, hard-won, was gold. Suspense lingered in pockets. Life's unscripted twists. December brought Maddox's first big client. A custom build for a film scout, deadline brutal. Stress etched lines around his eyes, snaps fraying tempers. One eve, after a 12-hour grind, he lashed at me over dinner. Can't you see I'm drowning? I bit back, old insecurities flaring. Then why shut me out? Storm brewing till Jax texted. Emergency beer summit? We met at a tavern in Ballard. Fishnets and neon. Jax sliding pitchers with mediator's grin. You two are like an old married couple. Fight hot. Makeup hotter. Laughter diffused. Truths aired. Maddox's fear of failure. My of insufficiency. Jax anchored. Lean's a team sport. Let us carry. Resolution came swifter. The build unveiling to acclaim. Maddox's name in local rags. Hale's haunt. Revving queer culture. Pride swelled collective. We celebrated with a bonfire at Golden Gardens. Driftwood crackling. Waves lapping confessions. Jax, buzzed on seltzer, pulled me aside. Proud of you, man, for choosing messy. Chose you first, I said, hugging him fierce. Maddox joined, arms enveloping. Ditto. Winter deepened, holidays reimagined, no ghosts, just us. Christmas at Maddox's, tree lopsided with ornaments scavenged. Jax's childhood angel, my painted bulbs, Maddox's marine dog tags. Gifts were practical heartfelt. Jax a leather-bound sketchbook, Maddox tools etched, forever fix. Me a weekend getaway voucher. Cabin in the Cascades. No signal, just snow and stars. New Year dawned crisp. Resolutions whispered over champagne. Jax, vulnerability daily. Maddox, roots over roads. Me, voice the unseen. The trip materialized mid-January. Blizzard burying the world white. Us holed in with cocoa and board games. One night, fire roaring, Maddox knelt. Ring simple, silver band etched with coordinates of that first kiss. Marry me, Riley? Make the mess official. Tears pricked. Yes tumbled out. Jax whooping from the corner where he'd accidentally hidden to film. Laughter dissolved barriers. The three toasting till dawn. Spring 2026 bloomed defiant. Engagements announced casual. Texts to friends. A barbecue for fanfare. Jax stood best man. Speech roasting gentle. Riley tamed the beast, but we all know who wears the pants. Vows exchanged in June, courthouse simple. Then party at the shop. Bikes garlanded, queer anthems blasting, toasts flowing like the sound. But the arc's heart beat humanistic. No fairy dust, just grit. Post-honeymoon, road trip to Yellowstone, geysers erupting like joy, reality nipped. Maddox's shop hit a slump, economy dipping. Jax's internship soured, boss a tyrant. My series stalled, critics quibbling. Conflicts resurfaced, arguments over budgets, Jax venting weekly, me mediating frayed. One July Eve, post-fight, Maddox's overtime, my withdrawal. Jax called, summit, now, tavern again, patterns comforting. We're looping, he said, eyes wise beyond years, but stronger each spin. Maddox nodded, hand in mine. Learned that from you, little bro. We brainstormed Jax pitching collabs, his designs on Maddox's bikes. Me illustrating. Synergy sparked, slump reversing. A pop-up show, commissions flooding. By fall, equilibrium held, flawed, beautiful. That November night, anniversary full circle, we returned to the Hale porch, rain pattering nostalgic. Jax raised a beer. To the call that changed everything. Maddox clinked, gray eyes warm. To presence. I smiled, ring glinting. To us, best friends, brothers, loves. Enduring. The storm passed, leaving rainbows and puddles. A family forged not despite betrayal, but through it, dramatic, suspenseful, achingly human. In America's vast tapestry, we were one thread. Resilient, romantic, real.